Hello, and welcome to the next episode of Dialogues on the Art of Arab Fashion in collaboration with the Office of Public and Cultural Diplomacy at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation in Abu Dhabi. I am Emma Farmer and will be your host for today's webinar. Today, we're absolutely delighted to be joined by Emirati diplomat Adhra Mansoori, and of course, our founder and our host, Dr. Reem Mutwalli. The format of today's talk will be approximately 50 minutes of discussion, followed by Q&A from you, the audiences. Please use the Zoom Q&A function to ask questions. We love to hear from you. Also, please feel free to use the chat function and let us all know where you're from. For those joining for the first time, the ZAY initiative was founded to preserve the cultural heritage of Arab dress through the collection, documentation, and digital archiving of Arab historical attire and their stories. The goal is to empower and sustain global cross-cultural dialogue. But that's enough from me. Please allow me to welcome Dr. Reem and Adhra. Dr. Reem.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our session today. I'm very pleased to introduce you to a young lady, very impressive young lady, Adhra Mansoori. She is currently the head of the Caribbean Affairs at the UAE Embassy in Havana, Cuba. Before her current posting, she was the Senior Economic Affairs Specialist for both the Americas at the Economic and Trade Department at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Abu Dhabi. Adhra graduated with a bachelor's degree in commerce and a master's in international relations in 2014, and from the Australian National University in Canberra, Australia. And impressively, she did another master's degree in international relations and UAE diplomacy in 2018 from the Emirates Diplomatic Academy in Abu Dhabi. Adhra, welcome here. And I hope we're going to have a wonderful evening introducing UAE culture to our audience.
Inshallah, Doctora. Thank you.
To begin with, I thought I would introduce the ZAY initiative by starting with the name itself. As you know, ZAY in Arabic refers to dress. Usually it's dress or general attire of certain country or era. Tell me, Adhra, in your post in Cuba, I am sure you have so many people who ask and want to know much about UAE culture through their dress.
They
have you experienced? Yeah?
Yeah, because usually when I attend the receptions, they straight away ask me about my shida. So those are one of the things that I have to explain to them, that just in our culture we do wear them.
Correct. Correct. Exactly. This is why we have the ZAY initiative. It basically is concerned with collecting individual narratives through attire. In other words, if we go to the next slide, Emma, we are trying to surmise the intangible from the tangible. And we are trying to tell the story of a nation, of the whole Arab nation, not only the UAE. Today, we are focusing on the UAE through our dialogue, but in general, the ZAY initiative is working to document and introduce Arab culture to the rest of the world. Have you ever stopped and pondered how dress can tell a story of somebody? Adhra, what do you think?
Also referring back to receptions and attending things at the United Nations, you do see people wearing different attires. So you're always curious on what does that hairdress represent, like the way that they wear things. Yeah.
Correct. Very true. Very true. So to help illustrate the point further, we all get up every morning and we consciously or unconsciously decide what it is we want to put on based on our mood, maybe about the occasion, maybe even the duty that we are performing. So we are always telling a story through what we are wearing. in this image in particular, we can tell so much from just a simple image that we are showing to the audience today. And I'm sure, Adhra, you can see that this woman is a wealthy woman. So we know that she's living at a time of prosperity. We know that she is wearing gold. Therefore, she must be in a country where there is trade, there is commerce, there is interaction between different cultures. We see her dressed with her body covered. She is very colorful, but at the same time, she's covered. So she's telling us about her cultural norms, about her society, about her religious beliefs, about her individuality. Because you see her, she's very highly dressed. She's, tiptoe in good shape. So it means that she's trendy. You're learning so much about her personality, let alone her culture, her background, and the story of her people through just what she is wearing, the way she's sitting, her demeanor, how she's composing herself in one image. And I think this is so interesting that from such simple symbols that are told without even speaking, you can tell so much about yourself and about your people. Don't you think it's fascinating?
It is, it is.
And I'm sure, I know that through your position, you must have portrayed your national identity and represented your culture through your dress. And can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, as you can see from this slide, me and a few of my colleagues are dressed in our Emirati traditional dresses. And this was in the National Day that was held, I think it was last year or the year before that in New York. So you see the shil, the kandora that we are wearing, and we use that like.
Do you often do this? Do you do this often?
Usually when we do have receptions.
And what about on your daily rituals when you are at the office? Do you continue to wear the traditional dress, or do you combine two elements?
Definitely combining, but usually when we have meetings with different ambassadors of different countries, I usually prefer to showcase like wearing the muhawar, for example, because that's a good,
definitely,
good way of showing that this is the Emirati dress.
Yes, and I know in particular, we spoke earlier that you've always used what you wear as a form of a way to start a conversation, correct?
Oh, yes. I actually wore it today, which is always my conversation starter at receptions because it's quite, how to say it, like it's
eye-catching.
Eye-catching, yeah. They attract people to actually inquire about it, and that's when you can talk about the culture and how you dress. Yeah.
Definitely, that's very true, and I illustrated it through this image because you always have a very iconic earring and necklace that is worn by UAE women, part of UAE culture. We call it gouache, and the necklace, it is called Maria or Mishnaf. And Maria is usually the term that is given to a long necklace, beaded necklace. And then at the end of it, the crescent shape is called a shnaf in UAE dialect, and usually the shape is like a crescent because in Arab and Islamic culture, the crescent is a start of a new month. It is the beginning of good luck. It is the beginning. It's a good omen that people use, and they put it on their clothing to try and get people, to try and solicit good luck and good fortune. And you will see a lot of this information in the publications that we do through the ZAY initiative. This is one of them, Sultani Traditions Renewed. It chronicles the evolution of UAE dress, women's dress, through the life of Sheikh Zayed, the founding father, UAE founding father. And the reason we chose that period is because it's a wonderful period where the UAE culture moved from a nomadic, simple, tribal format to a more urban, international, global type of culture. And the changes that took place throughout that time are all chronicled in this publication. And I wanted to point it out so that people would know more. If they are interested in knowing more about UAE culture, they can always consult with that. We at the Zay Initiative have also developed this further. And I know you've been looking through our website and you have been researching. Tell me what you thought of the digital archive.
Well, it makes my job easier because instead of explaining it myself, I would just be able to refer people to the website so that they can, and learn more about it. So very helpful, actually.
We prepared a small clip to introduce the digital archive to our audience. If I may, we can play the video.
Navigating to the Zay Initiative is very simple. Just type thezay.org. You will arrive at our homepage, from where you can explore. And to see our dress and adornment collection, click Collection. From here, scroll down to see the different articles. If you want to learn more, click View Details. You will need to create an account if you haven't already. But once you have logged in, the world of Arab dress awaits you. Every article includes detailed imagery of each piece. Sometimes it will include the photographs of those who once owned it or wore it. The information on the right of these images presents a brief introduction. Clicking on the image will enlarge it for more details. Others will include video clips with further explanations when possible. Underneath the images is an in-depth study of the article, including the tangible and the intangible. You will notice some words are in red. Point your mouse over them, and you can view the definition of that item. If you prefer to view in Arabic, click at the top right-hand corner. Here, you can navigate again in the same manner, where you will find all the information, as well as the pop-up glossary terms in Arabic. If you want to go to more detail, where possible, we include suggestions of additional reading material, including links to our blog and other websites. We are working very hard on making our full and constantly growing collection of over 1,350 pieces available online for everyone to explore. We aim to become the most reliable guide to Arab dress and adornment in the world. And we look to you all to help us sustain the legacy.
As you see, Adhra, it's a colossal amount of work, and it requires a number of dedicated people in both Arabic as well as English language who can write, research, document, and have the technical know-how to produce this sort of interactive format on a global level. It's quite impressive, and I hope it will help young individuals, be it designers or diplomats or researchers, to be able to come across our culture, the Arab culture, and learn more about it. I wonder if this is something you find helpful in your line of work.
It would be, because as I mentioned, I really do have, I receive inquiries with regards to what I wear and the accessories that I use. So as I said, I can always just refer them and they can just, how do you say it, explore themselves. So that's exciting.
Yes, I totally agree. And it's really wonderful. The feedback that we're getting on this is really wonderful. And from here, I thought we would introduce our audience to the basic elements of men's attire in the UAE. And again, we are using an image here to illustrate the point. Again, when you see a man dressed up in this format, you can learn so much about that person's culture. In here, I wondered, can you identify any of the pieces that you're seeing?
For me, definitely the bish, the ghata, the iqal, yeah.
Correct. So we'll start from the top, and this is Sheikh Zayed the First. The painting was created lately of an old image that was taken of Sheikh Zayed in 1880. And he is dressed in the epitome of a sheikh and a leader of that time. So why do we say that? Because he is wearing the agal, which is the head cord that holds his headscarf, which is called the ghutra. And the agal that he's wearing is not a normal one. It's a very special one that was only worn by kings and leaders. And therefore it has a special name called shutfa, which not many people nowadays know, because this form of agal has went out of practice within this millennium. He's also wearing the ghutra, which is the white scarf, headscarf that men wear, but in here, he's wearing it in wool format, and it's a Kashmiri one. And Kashmiri scarves are very, very expensive scarves, and they are only owned by the elite. So again, it is saying, I am a very important person, I am a leader, I am a man of substance. He is then wearing the abaya, as you said, or what we call a bisht when it comes to men. And in the abaya, you see again the gilding work, you see the wool, the high quality soft wool that is used in creating it. You see underneath that he is wearing what we call a kandora, and a kandora is the tunic undershirt that is worn by men and by women as well. Men wear it usually in white and very plain, simple colors, depending on the season. So it sometimes can be yellowish with saffron dye. It could be brownish, it could be cream color. So it's a variations of the monotone colors. And then on his waist, he is wearing the Omani dagger, which is usually made out of silver. It's a ornamental format. It shows his stature, it shows his position, it shows his wealth, and it shows his power. So he is saying so much in just a simple image. You know, it is really fascinating how much you can read about a person and about a culture from the way they are dressed. And of course, on his feet, he would have the sandals, the leather sandals, which we call nu'ul. Underneath his kandora, he would wear a loincloth, which is called a wizar. And it conceals the lower part of the body and helps the whole outer articles of clothing to sit and drape nicely onto the figure. I'm sure your father dresses in this format, correct? So you're very familiar with this. But I don't know whether you knew much about the Kashmiri ghutra, which is called the shal. Have you come across it? Have you seen any of your family wear it?
Usually in winter time because it's warmer for their head.
Correct, that's very true. And this image here of the founding fathers, Sheikh Zayed and Sheikh Rashid, again, their images, their photographs show you so much and tell you so much about their story, about who they are, about what they stood for. You see them together in that image. They are both wearing what is called a koot, which comes from the English word coat, which is actually the dressy jacket that is worn on top of their kandora. And on top of that, they are wearing their abaya. It shows that they are trendy. They are they are going with the style, with the flow. they are experimenting, they are being exposed to the outer culture, they are taking from the outer culture and they are adapting it and evolving it to the way they want to appear, which is exactly what you are doing now. When you are wearing your abaya and shela, you don't wear it in the same format that your mother or grandmother wore it. You've adapted it to the format that is functional to your needs nowadays. And then we see Sheikh Zayed again wearing the shutfa, which is the very thick gilded agal of the period. You see him again wearing the shal terma, and it is the Kashmiri shal, which shows his wealth, his stature. And you see the power that is exuberating from the image. This is a very interesting image because it shows me as well experimenting with this. I grew up, as you know, in the UAE, and I was very privileged to have known Sheikh Zayed from childhood, as you see in that small image, until he passed away, Allah yarhamah. And he was instrumental in ensuring that these traditions and these habits of dress, as well as cultural heritage of the UAE, to continue. So it was very important for him that everyone dressed in UAE traditional clothing and continued and sustained these traditions as we went forward. And as in my work at the Cultural Foundation, I have worn this outfit so many times that it became a form of a symbol of myself as well as I went along. From there, I wanted to take you to somewhere which has nothing to do with the UAE, but shows you again how color, how certain articles of clothing can influence and can tell stories about the people that own them. And remember when we were talking, this was a really fascinating story, if you remember it.
It was. Can you share it?
Yeah, actually, this came to us from New York, and I was contacted by a young man whose father owned this one. He lives in New York, but his father lived and passed away in Paris. He was French, and he was a doctor. And this doctor one day in the 1930s was walking on a bridge, and he saw a young man who was attempting to commit suicide. And the doctor ran to him, dissuaded him, and lo and behold, this young man was a Libyan prince, and son of a prince. So we're talking a long time ago, when Libya still had princes at the time, and the father wanted to thank the doctor for the good deed that he bestowed on his son by saving his life. So he gifted him something called the khil'a, which is a very typical Islamic tradition of honoring a person. When a man of high stature takes off his abaya and presents it to someone else, يخلعها, take it off and put it on somebody else. And that's why we call it khil'a. And actually, the word khil'a itself went into the Western vocabulary and became gala. And that's why when you have galas, because people dress up in galas and they wear something that's not their normal dress and type, formality. So it came from the word khil'a in the Islamic and Arab tradition. And as you can see, it's a red color abaya, and it was made in Syria because Syria was the center of textile and weaving at that period of time. So it's very interesting. You would never assume a man would wear a red abaya, would you?
Yeah.
It tells us so much about their culture and their life at that period of time, which generally we wouldn't even know if we hadn't had this example of clothing survive and be part of a collection now. This is another one. Do you know much about what she's wearing? Do you see the gold that is on her dress?
I mean, it's a beautiful dress, and I would love
yes. This one is another story, and it is the story of Sheikha Maryam bint Said al-Nahyan. And this was her wedding dress, one of her wedding dresses, and it is decorated with gold coins. Would you remember what they were called?
Can you remind me?
I'm sorry, I'm putting you on the spot, but I enjoy that. You have to give me some space. Actually, they call them huruf, which is very interesting again. And why do they call them huruf? They call them huruf or mishakhas. And what is interesting is that when you research it and go back to the root of the word, huruf, of course, means calligraphy.
Yeah.
Correct? So because these are coins, in the older generation, they would call the coin, because it has calligraphy on it, they call it huruf.
Okay.
So that's where the word came from. And then they call it mishakhas, because the other side of the coin usually would have shakhs.
Okay,
on
like
it, you know, like a portrait of a person. So in Arabic, you say shakhs. So they call it huruf umshakhas, which is a very interesting aspect to learn about the culture of our forefathers and our elders. And what is lovely here again is that you are seeing the tradition of what we call miyazza, which is special dress format, very typical of the Gulf and Arab region, being worn as a form, as a stylized form, very modern form, because this dress dates to the early 2000s, you know, after the millennium. So it shows you how traditional style of clothing continues to evolve and continues to be adapted and used through the new culture and modern culture and let's say contemporary culture. It still has space. I mean, look how beautiful it is, correct? I mean, I would love to wear something like that. Don't you think so?
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah. Have you ever worn a thobe, Adhra?
I mean, not as fancy as that one, but last year for our National Day in Cuba, I did wear something similar, but yeah, not as
yes.
fancy.
But I'm sure it would have been a beautiful piece. And I thought through this, we would introduce, if you can help me, we can introduce the basic components of UAE female attire. Now that we spoke about the men and what they wore, this is what the women would wear. And we would start with what the shela, which is what you are wearing. And believe it or not, this was the form of abba that was used by most women in the old days, because the abaya was a very special article of clothing that was only afforded by the elite. So they would call it a suwa'iyya. And suwa'iyya means, in Arabic, it comes from the word sa'a, which means they only wore it for specific short amounts of time. And that's why it's called a suwa'iyya. And usually a woman would put it on her wedding when she's moving, they are moving her from her home to her husband's home, or when they are traveling from one area to the other. And only the elite would be able to own a abaya. But what they did was they would lend out their abaya to those who are in the tribe, who could not afford having the abaya during their wedding day. It was a form of you know, cultural cohesion in a way between the tribes and between the people of the tribe. So the woman would wear a shela, but her shela, if you look at the shela here compared to yours has become shorter. Exactly. The one that they used before, it was much bigger. It engulfed most of the body. Underneath her shela, she would wear the thobe, which is the outer garment, overgarment. And it's the formal form of dress that women would wear when you compare it to the men's abaya, which is their formal attire. Underneath that, as we said, they would wear a kandora, which is the tunic dress, similar to the men's. The difference between them is the fact that the women's is more colorful, it could be printed, it could be embroidered, and that's what you called a mukhawwara, which means it was a machine embroidered. And the term is a non-Arabic term that came into our vocabulary due to the interaction between East and West and the Silk Route that brought this type of embroidery about from the East to us. Underneath her kandora, she would wear a sarwal. I'm sure you know what's a sarwal. It's the underpants, correct? Yes. And usually the sarwal would be decorated with the most beautiful silver ribbon work, or telly, what we call telly. And it is the braiding of silver with cotton or with silk thread, almost like a lace format, to create very long strips, which we call khusa, and then putting it together to create this beautiful cuff line that can be on the arms or on the sarwal itself, which is the underpants. And she would wear sandals. But of course, women have one special thing that men do not have on their feet. Can you name it?
Oh, I forgot the name.
Henna. Yeah, they would wear henna more because they would walk barefoot at home rather than wearing sandals. They would wear them when they go out, but because the home is the domain of the women, they would generally walk barefoot, but they would make their feet so beautiful using the henna and the decorative work that comes with that. I know you are wearing the abaya, which is now very much typical of most of the young girls of your age, because you left the domain of the home and you entered the working domain. So you are working, you are moving, you are in public, therefore you need something to cover in order to align your social and religious beliefs with your individual aspirations and ambitions and work that you are producing. So that's why even the abaya evolved and changed as we went along. And speaking of that, I thought this was a wonderful slide for us to lead into. And I'm going to let you take over here and talk about these two men and how through their clothing, they are representing a beautiful idea.
This was, I think, a year ago in February 2019, which was when Pope Francis visited the UAE. And this was actually his first visit to the Arabian Peninsula, which is why it was very memorable for us. And during that period of time, the document of human fraternity was signed. And after that, there was, how to say, like the Abrahamic family house was built, and it would be hosting a mosque, a church, and a synagogue, which would actually be a place where, well, it's a shared space for worship. So that's actually very interesting and something that everyone looks forward to getting built here in the UAE.
Adhra, if you come a little bit closer to the mics, because some comments are coming through that our voice maybe is not so clear, and I hope this one will help us. But again, yes, you are very right. This is the Abrahamic village, and you have a representation of the three Abrahamic faiths. And you see Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed, and you see the Pope, both of them representing their culture, representing their background, representing their ideology, their religious beliefs. And they are walking, you know, one by the other in a gesture of tolerance, of acceptance, of cultural exchange, of understanding. And I thought it was a beautiful image to carry us into the next slide, which here we have the dress of tolerance. Luckily, at the Zay Initiative, a young designer by the name of Lubna Luta, UAE designer, created a dress during the year of tolerance. And she gifted us, the Zay Initiative, this dress. And I thought it was a beautiful example from which we can introduce women's dress to the audience, because they always think that you are in black. But in reality, UAE women are very colorful in their clothing. And I thought we would use this clip to introduce that to them. so lovely to see women expressing themselves and in their traditional clothing, sustaining it, continuing it, and presenting it in a very modern format. Don't you think so?
Very true, very true.
And to me, this leads us to another story. And I'm going to test you now again, Adhra, okay?
You know that I'm a very forgetful person, so I would need your help again.
No, I'm sure you know. I'm going to ask you, do you know what this gold piece is?
The gold piece to the left of the screen, no, but the burqa, definitely, yes.
Okay. Well, let me explain. What is interesting here is, again, we have a story, very lucky to have a story of a woman that is from the Jil al-Tayyibin, as we call it here in the UAE, which is the older generation. And you have her image there. And we are very, very lucky because she allowed us to keep the image together with the article of clothing that she has. Her daughter gifted us this ring, which is on the left side of the screen. And it's a toe ring. And in the UAE, culturally, women would wear toe rings because as I told you, they would walk barefoot. So a toe ring would really beautify and showcase your wonderful feet that has been decorated with all this beautiful henna. And it adds to it. So she called us through it and she contacted us through Instagram. And she said, I have a toe ring from my mother. It's only one. Usually they are two. They are a pair. You wear them on both toes. But I only have one because the other one is lost. And I really would like to preserve the story of my mother. My mother is a burqa maker. She is the one who made those burqas on the right side of the image. And she used to make these burqas by hand, which is the face mask that women wear. You see her wearing one in the image, for the Al Maktoum family, which is the ruling family in Dubai. And I went and visited the woman and I visited the young girl and I was very happy. They made me feel so much at home. And I gained friendship through that with them. Sadly, Zainab, which was what her name was, Walda Zainab Kalban, passed away last year. But look, we have some memory of her, some remnants of her. And this is the whole idea of the Zay initiative and why we created it, because it allows us to keep the stories, to sustain the narratives of these women throughout time. Which takes me to the next slide, which is a wonderful one. This is a dress and it belonged to Sheikh Salama bint Hamdan Al Nahyan, wife of Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed. And it is part of the Zay initiative. And we have a short clip to introduce this dress to the audience.
Emirati gold brocaded rainbow overgarment, thob mkhawwas, telli rainbow, Emirati. This Emirati gold brocaded zari, rainbow overgarment thob from the 1980s is part of an ensemble Thob Kandora, commissioned from the late Fatima bint Saad, a renowned palace dressmaker by Sheikh Salama bint Hamdan Al Nahyan, wife of Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, the Crown Prince of the Emirate of Abu Dhabi, a childhood friend of Dr. Reem Al Mutwalli, founder of the Zay initiative. The main fabric is light silk chiffon with a green, fuchsia, red, and blue checkered motif with gold brocading, khawwas from Zarrai. The neckline, bidha, is adorned with telli work of red silk thread, prism, and gold metallic straw, khus. Using a running stitch by continuously looping metallic straw khus with silk thread, a cord or braid is created in a style known as telli fatla. This cord braid, known as fatla, is then stitched by hand to the garment in looped, straight, and semicircular geometric patterns. By the 1980s, the country had forged greater links with global markets in all sectors. In tailoring terms, it resulted in the importation of a wider variety of new threads, in this case from Japan. This garment is an important item in the development of Emirati clothes making, as it marks the introduction of Japanese multicolored metallic straw, khus, telly rainbow, to Emirati cord braiding, telly techniques, as can be seen in the heart-shaped stump work motifs. Once this garment was worn in public, it led to the popularization of multicolored metallic khus, telly rainbow, and the style was much copied by other dressmakers because of the prominence and trend-setting influence of Sheikha Salama.
Do you see how wonderful it is that through one garment, we managed to learn about the economic situation of the UAE. We learned how it interacted with Japan, how the economy changed, how trends were set. Sheikha Salama is very much known for her style in clothing and attire. And so many women would like to mimic her style and use the style trends that she creates. Isn't it fascinating that through one article of clothing we can learn so much?
Definitely.
I'm sure when in Cuba, I know that they are very strong in artifacts and cultural craftsmanship. When I visited, I saw so much wealth in that format. And I'm sure you meet a lot of this there. It would be wonderful if we could have some sort of a collaborative work between the artisans of the UAE and the artisans in Cuba. Don't you think so?
We can definitely try and work on that, Doctora.
I think it will be a lovely project.
The colors over there are very lively as well. So you can see that we can, collaborate on that aspect.
True. They are very contrasting and very strong the way we have it in the culture here, which takes us to this image. And I remember we spoke about it because we all remember scents in our life, and perfume, especially in the Arab world and the Gulf region, has always been an important part and parcel of the culture here. And in this particular article, again, it was a young girl like you who understood the value of our traditional culture and our heritage. And she had this kandora, which belonged to her grandmother, and it is embroidered in silver, by the way. And she wanted to gift it to the Zay initiative in order to preserve her grandmother's name and her grandmother's story. And she had one condition, and that is that we would take the kandora with a vial of her perfume, her grandmother's perfume, so that the scent of her grandmother will always stay with the dress. Isn't that beautiful?
It is.
It's so touching to think that someone has this appreciation of their culture and of their background and of their heritage, and interested in preserving it from such a young age and thinking about giving it to us in order for us to preserve it. So this is another story that we managed to keep and to hold for the next generation. I know that, Adhra, you have many role models, and I know you have one particular role model you wanted to speak about. And I thought this is a beautiful slide for us to talk about it.
It's actually Her Excellency Reem Al-Hashimi. She's the Minister of State for International Cooperation. And actually, she's my role model for wearing khawar in meetings, because I remember seeing her when I was beginning my career in diplomacy, and I was seeing her in international events wearing the abaya and the khawar, which inspired me to also do that, even though I was abroad or here having meetings. So yeah.
Yes. Reem is like a daughter to me, and I'm very proud of her, and I'm proud of you all actually, because you are wonderful examples of women as well as UAE citizens, and I admire the work that you are doing. And yes, I love the fact that both of you are representing your country through your dress. And to take that further through the Zay initiative, I thought it would be a nice way to lead to the end of our discussion by showing examples, role models of UAE women dressed in UAE attire. This is a project we are working on, and it is called Draped in Heritage, whereby we took examples such as this one. This is Sheikha Sultan Qasmi from Sharjah, and she is a member of the Special Olympics team, and she's a skier. So we took her in her element, in the skiing position, and we photographed her draped in her heritage. We did the same. I don't know, are we playing the video? Yes, that's a small clip that shows her as we are filming her. And then we did another one of Sheikha Latifa Al Maktoum, and she is an Olympic show jumper. And again, she is wearing many elements that came from, as you see, a burqa, a shela, a thob, a kandora, sarwal. Each one of those came from a different lady, of a different time, of a different period. As you see, we have from 1960, 84, 72, 81, 77. Each one of them tells the story of the woman that gave it to us. And she puts it on. By putting it on, she is carrying their strength and learn their experience and channeling it through her in order for her to achieve the goals that you are setting. And the third image I thought would be wonderful to show, which not many people will believe. As you see here, we have a UAE ballerina, Alia Niadi, and what a beautiful sight, you know, to have a young woman expressing herself, shattering glass ceilings, and still in her traditional, you know, attire and her, you know, heritage draped all over her, protecting her, helping her, guiding her, giving her the strength. I see that in you, Adhra, and I am very, very pleased to have met you and to have discussed all of this through you. You are a great example of these women that are leading UAE culture and helping move this ship forward.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining me today. And I hope that we will meet in person soon, inshallah, either in Cuba or here back in the UAE. I know Emma is eager to bring in a few questions. Let's see what we've got.
Indeed, indeed. What a wonderful conversation that could go on for a lot of time. But let's allow some questions in from our audience. So if anyone wants to add to the questions, please just pop them in the Q&A function and we'll get through as many as we can. So first of all, Dr. Reem, I think this one's to you. The purple garment is gorgeous, but would the sleeves be to the wrist or a short as shown here?
No, actually they are to the wrist. It's because the way it was presented on the mannequin. And then remember that these silver dresses or gold dresses were worn by the bride generally as part of her torso. And women at that time were very young because they were married at a very young age. So the woman that wore this article of clothing would have been a very young lady. And therefore that is the size of that young lady rather than a fully developed adult, you know?
Brilliant, thank you. Adhra, this one I think to you. How was the UAE embassy in Cuba involved with the pandemic this year?
Well, actually, we assisted with coordinating sending the humanitarian aid. So we coordinated sending 8 tons of medical aid to Cuba, but also 12.5 tons of medical assistance to other Caribbean countries. So that for us is actually a great achievement.
Amazing, fascinating. And are you involved in this on a daily basis, Adhra?
well, coordinating with a lot of countries require a lot of effort.
Yes,
so
I'm sure. I'm
yeah.
sure, yes.
Dr. Reem, the initiative is such a trove of treasures. Are you looking to exhibit in Abu Dhabi anytime soon?
Yes, definitely. We're looking to exhibit in UAE as a whole, as well as even going further out. And it is through this collaboration that we have forged with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Office of the MOFAC that we are hoping, and through these young ladies that we are meeting in all these different embassies and missions, we would hope and we would welcome a way that we can send these articles of clothing, not only have them through the webinars, but have them in person. And this is something we can, what do you think, Adhra?
Yeah, definitely. Like I can already imagine places to exhibit in Cuba. So we can like definitely work on that. I would be very
I would love that. Yes, I would love that. And I would love also to have a whole ecosystem around it, not only the museum pieces that we own as an initiative, but also we can take the craftswomen, we can take designers, we can have workshops. A whole ecosystem can exist around these pieces that we've got. And from them, we can have a wonderful cultural exchange between the UAE and any other country, be it Cuba or any other of the missions that we've got all around the world. Don't you think so?
Absolutely.
I see you nodding and getting so excited. I like that. I love the energy that's coming out
in my eyes.
Adhra, sorry, and another one to you. How is it to be a female Arab diplomat in Cuba? Can you share some of your experiences? I guess, you know, we touched on it at the very beginning when you talked about everyone always asks about your Shayla, but can you elaborate on that?
Like as far as I know, up till now, I'm the only female Arab diplomat that's there. So yeah, every time I go to a reception or like an event over there with other countries, they already know that, you know, this is the female diplomat from the United Arab Emirates because of what I wear, because of, yeah, like me being the only one. So it's how do you say it? It's very interesting in a way because it shows the support of leadership to youth, also like women. So yeah, makes me proud.
It must be a great responsibility because you are not only representing the UAE, but you are representing women from the Arab world. So you are carrying quite a lot of responsibility on your shoulders, and I commend you for that, really.
Well, it's a lot of pressure, but you manage.
Well done, well done. I'm so impressed.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And then Dr. Reem, can you tell us how the Zay Initiative started and why did it start and how people can get more involved with it?
Well, we welcome everyone to be involved, be it on a, ministerial level or be it on an individual level. And that's the beauty of the Zay Initiative, that everybody can become genuinely involved in it through sending us articles of clothing and attire and adornment that belong to one or other of their family in order for us to preserve their memory and to keep it alive through time. So the idea came about after having worked in this field for some time. As you saw the book that was produced on UAE culture and UAE dress, and the need for us as Arabs and Arab women especially to represent the image that we want to portray about ourselves. I mean, look how beautiful it is to see a young woman in a diplomatic field representing not only UAE, as we heard now, but representing all Arab women. I think that's a moment to be really proud of. And the Zay is just a continuation of what Adhra and her likes are doing.
Fascinating, just absolutely fascinating. So all these questions coming in, I'm just having a look at them all. Everyone's just loving the conversation. So that's really great. I think we're just going back to the purple wedding abaya. Dr. Reem, there are some questions about whether it could be could be photographed with the full length arm, so people can see it and display it properly. Maybe there's something on the digital archive.
Yeah, and actually it is portrayed with the model. The model is wearing it. The next, I don't know if we can go back to the image. I don't know if we can go to that image again. You see the model wearing it, and she's wearing it the way it should be worn, actually. And usually it is short enough to allow her, to allow the sarwal, which are the pants, to show from underneath. Because again, as I said, the sarwal is decorated with all that silver that the women would like. So you see, if you look at the image on the right, you see the young lady wearing the kandora, and you see how short it is, that her sarwal is visible, kind of. And when women sit on the floor, I'm sure you've experienced this, Adhra, through your grandmothers or grand aunts. When they sit on the floor, part of their leg would show, and the sarwal, those beautiful pants would show. Correct?
Definitely.
Yeah, and it's such a lovely, to me, it's a very nostalgic and wonderful image to look at. So definitely, yes.
Okay, fantastic. Well, I think sadly we are out of time. Just what a fascinating dialogue. Thank you so much, Adhra. Thank you so much, Dr. Reem. And of course, thank you so much to the Office of Public and Cultural Diplomacy in Abu Dhabi for partnering with us this evening. Our next session, once again, in partnership with the Office of Cultural and Public Diplomacy, is Threading SDGs and the Art of Dress. I'm so excited by this session. It's going to be on Monday, the 14th of December, once again, at the same time as today, wherever you are in the world. And this is in collaboration with the embassies of Norway and Athens. Full details about this webinar and our last webinar of the year can be found at www.thezay.org/events. Have an absolutely fabulous day, evening or night ahead of you, depending on where you are in the world. Thank you, Dr. Reem. Thank you,
Good luck, Adhra. I'm very proud of you, and I look forward to meeting in person soon. And thank you to our audience for being there and collaborating, and thank you for helping us keep the legacy.